Just in time to move my green screen. Yes, we're live. 7-Eleven. That reminds me. Tonight we're going to, because it's nighttime here, we're going to talk about the video that I just put up recently, very recently, actually within the last hour or so, I think, where I compared the Pontiac 400 pseudo Ram Air 400 versus the LT-1 350 that I put together. And there are a few things that I would like to change. I want to change my answer. And the reason that I want to change my answer is that the ideal situation is I deferred to using this test to demonstrate what happens with displacement, because I think it's really important, and it's way more important for street engines and even some street strip engines than it is for dedicated race engines. And we kind of illustrated that. So I demonstrated the power difference and most importantly, the torque difference between the 350 and the 302. We've done that before when I compared the 302 and the 327 and the 350, but also compared the 350 to the 400, because stepping up basically essentially 50 cubic inches makes a big difference in the power. And we saw that a lot going from the 302 to the 350, despite the fact that in that case, both of those made near the same power within a few horsepower of each other. But the torque difference was dramatic, not just the peak torque, but the torque through most of the curve. I mean, all the way up to the horsepower peak of the LT1, it was better than the 302. It's something that, and I'm sure guys were going to point this out, but it's something that you could help cure with gearing, because then you could get the little 302 wound out where it wants to make power, and it's doing very well out at the top. It wanted to pull all the way to 7,000. Not a problem. I know guys are going to tell me that their dad's cousin's brother's DZ302 went to 9,000 or 10,000 or whatever the next made up story is, 11,000, whatever their number is. Yeah, they all did that. None of them did that with factory springs. None of them did that with a factory cam, because they can't, or with stamped steel rockers or any of that stuff. That's not a real thing. I know that we wanted to, and I know we want our TAC to say that, but maybe it was set on 4-cylinder or something. So that probably is not a real thing. But they didn't love to rev. That's where they made power, because they're smaller. They're smaller than the 350 and smaller than the 327, both of which, when we showed that comparison, each time we went, down in displacement, we made power at an earlier RPM. Some of that on the LT1 certainly was the fact that it had a camshaft that had about 12 degrees less intake duration than the camshaft shared by the 302 and the 327. The problem with the Pontiac comparisons, like I said, on the 302 to 350, we jumped up a lot of torque, a lot of average power production. Going from the 350 to the 400 Pontiac, which is really what I wanted to test. The problem is that I'm not sure what camshaft was in the Pontiac. I didn't take it apart. We were thinking about doing a swap on there, but the motor was running so good and it was going in a car and they wanted to just drive it around, and the thing idled fairly nice and had the carburetor was working well with the camshaft that's in it, all of that stuff. The thing didn't leak. It was put together very nice. The gentleman that built it, Brian, hope you're up there watching. It did really well. So it just stayed together and is when the car is running and all that. So that was the right choice for that. The problem is that I don't know what camshaft did. I'm pretty certain it's one of two camshafts. It's the Ram Air 3 or the Ram Air 4 camshaft. It's one of the factory camshafts. I don't think it was the Ram Air 4. It doesn't have enough. I don't think it had enough idle lope, which not having a bunch of experience with either one of those camshafts on the Pontiac, but just judging by the specs on the camshaft, I would expect it to have a little bit more idle. Even on a 400, I would expect it to have a little bit different idle. So I'm thinking that it was probably a Ram Air 3 camshaft. But what I would like to know, I think that this would be interesting. And it doesn't tell us everything about what happens in the vehicle, because the vehicles could be different. They could have different weight. They could have different drivers. They could have different traction, different tires, different gearing, all of that stuff. So we don't know if a Ram Air 4 GTO or Firebird or whatever is going to beat a DZ302 or an LT1 Camaro or whatever. We don't necessarily know that, but we can know what happens and what the differences are on the power curves. So the ideal situation would be to put together a stock Ram Air 4 400, and then with the Quadrajet. And somebody told me that the Ram Air 4 motors had aluminum intakes, and I didn't know if that was the case. I thought that they were all cast iron. So if somebody knows that, if somebody knows Pontiacs really well, let me know if that's the case. But I would like to put together one of those. And then, because I honestly think, given, and we've talked a little bit about this before when we talk about displacement, but on the Pontiac, it's going to make more average power. We already know that even with whatever mild camshaft it has in it, it's making more low speed power, which is exactly what you'd expect. That's not really going to come from the camshaft. That's coming primarily from the change in displacement. The 350 has a smaller cam, although it's quite a bit bigger. It's going to be quite a bit bigger than the Ram Air 3 cam. Might be comparable in duration, although it's going to be a solid compared to the Ram Air 4. I'd like to look at those specs and see exactly what they are. The LT1 cam has like 342 degrees of intake duration and 254 on the exhaust, which is a lot. But yeah, I don't really know what the Ram Air specs are. I thought that they were in the 230 or so range. I think it's still a smaller camshaft. But I would like to put one together because I know that in both of those cases, the head flow is going to be kind of limiting, and that's going to become more prevalent as we go up in displacement. So it might be that the 400 kind of runs out of steam even before the 350 does. If it has a smaller camshaft, that would certainly be the case. And if it has the same head flow, which it may not, it may be a little better than the Fuelie heads. But if it is, it needs more head flow for the displacement to be able to run more engine speed. I don't know that it's going to want to run a bunch on a dual plane anyway. And, all of those things kind of go together. But it becomes harder to feed the bigger motor. But the gain is that you add a whole bunch of like low speed torque and then average power just because it's bigger. And that's, in this case, bigger definitely is better. So and I mentioned this in the video, that for street driving, that's why a 70 Camaro is way better to drive around in with a 350 than a DZ302 is. I mean, you have to have really, really steep gearing in the 69 Camaro. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're great cars. And someday I might make YouTube money so that I can afford something like that, even just a beat up one, not a restored one. But, and I would drive around in either one, but having more torque is always better for drivability. It has a milder cam. It has a bigger motor. You don't have to run 5 series gears in it. It handles better. I like the 70 better for me. And having the bigger motor would be better. But I think that having a Firebird or a GTO would step things, especially the Firebird, if it had comparable weight, would step things up even more. I think the drivability would be even better on a 400, like a Ram Air 4 Pontiac, would be even better. And I think that it might make every bit as much peak power and more torque. So I'd like to put one of those together and find out if that's the case and see what it really does. But in addition to that, I would also like to put together a HO 350. Because comparing a 350 to a 350, and since I already have the data on the Chevy 350, putting together a Pontiac 350 would be kind of cool. So put together because that has the Ram Air 4 camshaft. We have to find some, I think they're 48. I think the heads are 48s on that. So you have to find specific heads. And the gentleman that's doing the machine work on the Pontiac, the trophy 4-cylinder, is looking for heads to see if I can put something together so I can make an HO 350, which would be cool. Because the 350 also has something going for it. And there's something that I posted recently when I posted the valve notch on the 396. And we've talked about putting 823 heads or 821 heads on a small bore 4.8 or 5.3, the rec port heads. The 350 has the same thing. So it has valves that are big enough and a combustion chamber that's big enough that it overhangs the small bore size on the 350. So to be another instance where that's happening, and it'd be a good thing for us to check out. Now that I see that and I see the way the factory did that notch, I'm wondering if softening those edges might not be a good idea. If people out there have done it, I've never put together a 396, so I've never tried that. But I'm sure that has to be one of the tricks, because I mean, why wouldn't you do that? So that's what I want to do. I'd like to build a 400. Andy, my buddy Andy, might have a bone stock 400. I'm hoping that it's a Ram Air 4. That would be cool, because then we could just run that and get that data and go, oh, hey, look, it's this. That would be nice. And then I could put together the 350, which would be good also. And then I have 400 stuff that I want to buy from this young lady, and then put together something, some kind of Pontiac thing, a stroker thing or whatever. And then I've got the trophy 4-cylinder. And so lots of lots and lots of Pontiac stuff. So let's see what you guys got going on for tonight. Hopefully you guys have all taken a look at the video that's up. Squirrels in the house. Casey, what's going on? 1 Liter Mafia. Eric, you got the first thumbs up. See, you guys should be rushing to get the thumbs up. Who's going to be number 100 on the thumbs up? Right now, we're at 50. You get a shout out if you're number 100. Nobody's going to care about that. Utah just got blasted by snow and you're stuck in traffic. That's not good. Definitely did not have a RAM or 4 cam. I don't think it did. Can a BTR Stage 2 NA LS3 cam work in my LM7? Yes. You need to make sure, and I think that BTR probably did this, but you need to make sure if you have a Gen 3, if you have an LM7, then you have a Gen 3 5.3, you need to make sure that the cam has a cam sensor wheel on it. Does anyone else grin and bear the ads? Am I wasting my time, or does it do any good? If you watch the ads, it helps me. So if you just let it run, that is beneficial. If you can do that, I have people now, and so everybody here can do this too. They just let the channel run in the background of their shop or their house or wherever they're. Mostly it's for shops and stuff, and so they just turn it on and let it run. And so you're not necessarily watching ads, but you're listening to stuff. So you're listening to all of us chat. When I say all of us, me chatting at you, basically. And so they have that on. So it just goes through and then the ads run, but they're obviously off doing other things. So the guys that are doing that, thank you very much. Bill, good to see you here. That's very beneficial to me because I'm sure that it helps with the algorithm. Richard, love your videos here in Canada. My brethren up north. Your wealth of knowledge. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We use the thoughts word. If your question is, have I ever seen a Dodge V10 in the wrecking yard? I have not. I've seen, well, I take that back. I've seen one only in a truck, but it wasn't even all there. So I haven't ever run one. Originally from Northern Michigan. Northern Michigan does get snow. Big pistons make big torque, and big stroker cranks make torque too. My 9.72 355 with Vortec heads and XR 288 cam ran 1190s in a full body 3rd gen Camaro with a turbo 350. That's all good. Vortec heads are good, and that's a big enough camshaft to have the thing make power. I'm sure you had to do some work to the Vortec heads to use that camshaft. The Ram R5 had aluminum intake. Okay, and they didn't offer that in production cars, so, but those were cool heads, though. Iron Chief is saying Ram R4 had aluminum intake. All Ram R4 did have the aluminum intakes. Okay, so I'm getting conflicting information. Grew up with the dad whose daily driver was a Formula 400, and on the street many times you could be traction limited. And I talked about that in the video, that assume, and that would be the thing, even with the LT1, when you're comparing that to the DZ302, if you have 400 foot-pounds or near 400 foot-pounds and you have a 4 Series gear, which was certainly offered in that car, are in first gear, you're certainly with those bias plies or still belted radials. They weren't even radials then by then, because they didn't have radial tuned suspension until later on in the Firebirds. In a 70 Camaro, you probably would be traction limited even with the LT1. Tim, you like the 2 live streams? How did you like when I did 3 live streams? Because it really, the only thing better than 2 would have to be 3. And then when I did that, I also did I came on for a couple of hours early in the morning with my buddy Jimmy, and we were doing I'm learning day trading. I was already running my snowmobiles, but all 2 feet melted. Now I'm back to driving the Z50. Yeah, but like that's a terrible thing. You get to choose between a snowmobile and a Z50A. I mean, that's like choosing between 2 supermodels. Scuba, did you already ask that question about the LS3 camshaft? Yeah, you did. I thought we answered that. Did you ask it again before I answered it? Richard, what is the cause of the high back pressure with the Holley LS manifold exhaust deal? Is it the ID of the holes, or because I think it's where the two are joined? And because I think have to look inside there, but I think it's where the two merge together. And I think it's the size of the opening also somewhat, but I think it's primarily the merge. About to start snowing here in the Twin Cities, northern Michigan. Which is better, the LS or the old small block Chevy? Neither one of them have to be better. They can both be equally good. They can both do the thing that you want. Todd's in the house. Besides nitrous and a better flowing exhaust, what are bolt-ons that work emissions legal? I don't know. You'd have to look and see what's emissions legal for your vehicle in your area. Wasn't the GS Stage 1 the one to have for a Buick? Yeah. Did I scroll by a bunch of stuff? I think I did. Man. Let's see. I apparently went by lots of stuff here. I need to come back. Let's see. Is the cost of a retrofit hydraulic roller cam worth the cost of a flat tappet cam? Probably not on a street strip, especially if you have something that's already running. I would leave it running. Pontiac 350s never get any love. They really don't. I see a few of them for sale. They're only a few $100s for complete motors that are running. This video, the GTO 382 horsepower at the wheels. SC455, that's a good one. Can I use a 66 tri-power manifold on my 67? The change was in 67, but I'd have to look and see if they didn't change the because the 66 tri-power is going to be the early head. You should be able to look at your cylinder head and tell whether you have the altered valve angle head. Dad got a 71 Formula 400 for $1,100. Nice. I listen while driving down the highway. Scuba Speed, what's up? Nothing better than a Super Duty 455. Richard, you can run an LS2 GTO timing cover. No, I know how to make it work. I'm just saying that if it would be easier for him, if the block is already set up to run, if it's a 24X and it has a 1X and the sensor is in the back, that because they make cams that don't have that. So just make sure that cam has that, and then it'll just go right in, and he'll be able to use all the stuff that he already has. That'd be a lot easier than having to also change the front cover and extend the wiring harness. I love throwing your stuff up while I'm working on the shop. See, that's excellent. More views, the better. Yep. I scored an L33 short block for $1,300 at Black Friday. Oh, nice. 50%. I like that. I like those 50% days off. The one that's by Westech is only doing 40s now, I think. How about a 1970 Buick GS Spec 350 V8, 315 horsepower, 410 foot-pounds, 10 1/4 one. I had one in a 70 GS. That'd be good. I like those too. I mean, it sounds good. It's just not rated anywhere near what these other ones are. Burns, you have to move 10 whole feet. That's good. Must be some traffic. Yeah, the GS Stage 1, that's a 455. That's the 360 horse version with the 510 foot-pounds, I think it was rated at. Hobby, you were painting your toenails? I hope you're using Krylon. Which one can take more aggressive reliability, the Chevy or the Pontiac? I don't know what you mean by aggressive reliability. The 66 tri-power fits heads 65 and up. Okay, I'm going to do some searching here. Okay. And I'm looking. '65 and '66 units are compatible with the original and aftermarket Pontiac heads commonly available today. I'm not sure what that means. Any 68 to 72 cast iron 4-barrel makes an excellent choice. There was something on here that I was looking at. Told me what was going on. Okay, we'll have to do that another day. Richard, have you ever tested a 400 small block? Only an aftermarket block one, not a stock one. The problem is that they never made any performance versions of that. The ads on 24/7 streaming are almost always 30 minutes. An ad by itself is 30 minutes? Richard, do you plan to write any more books? I don't have any plans to do that right now. Chris, you're holidaying in Australia. That's awesome, and you're still watching. That's fantastic. You find an old GMC motorhome, they come with 400 small blocks. The wagons and stuff also did with the 400 small blocks. I remember my buddy Harold had one that he had it to tow his boat, and we used to dip that thing all the way in over by the Queen Mary. As you might imagine, it was rusty. My 455 is drilled for full 4-bolt mains with 2-bolt caps. That's how the 400 is. That's how the Trophy 4 is like that. I think all Pontiacs are like that. I think that they can all be 4-bolt mains, but they have 2-bolt caps on them. After running my Daytona turbo, I'm convinced that turbo is the way to go. It really is. Once you go boost, it's hard to like not have that. 4-bolt 400s had 3 freeze plugs on each side of the block. Our ported double hump fuel heads limited to 350 horsepower on a flat top 350. Somebody swears to this. The heads flow. A good set of fuel heads can flow 200, so they'll support more power than that. The flat top has nothing to do with that. It depend on how much camshaft you put in and what intake and stuff you have on it. Hopefully the flat tops that you're talking about have valve reliefs in them so that you can then run enough camshaft. Not all Pontiacs are drilled for 4 bolts. The old man's garage just bought 2 new ones in a crate, 400 short blocks from 1980. Nice. Still enjoying my FE. I'd like to run an FE. I'd like to run a 390. The last year they made 400s was 78. They stored a ton. Yeah, and then they carried them over into 79. Rammer 4 blocks had 4 bolts. I have a 400 block, and it's a stick block because it has the provision for the what is it, the clutch linkage or something. It has the little ball on it, but it's a 2 bolt. It's not a 4 bolt, but you can put 4 bolt caps on it. The bolt pattern change on Pontiac heads in 65. Why do people badmouth the 400? Because of the steam holes? I think it's because it's different. And because just like with other oval port big blocks, all the performance motors had rec ports on it, which you could argue that that's probably not necessary. It'd been interesting to see what they would have made just with a standard set of 049s or something like that on there. And the same thing with the 400, because it was only a big motor and it was a big passenger car motor that was never designed to make big power. People didn't think that that was a performance engine. Richard, with Pontiac, they say you can only run 480 without the retainer sitting in the guides. Well, retainer to seal clearance would be definitely something that you should measure. I don't know what the absolute there is. Don't know. I haven't tested enough valve to or retainer seal clearance on Pontiac heads. The trophy 4-cylinder is the one that's half of a 389. And now this one will be half of a 400 because we bored it out. My SRT motor is loosely based off, let's see, basically the same as a 420A head, then Dodge's bottom end, recipe similar to the older 2.2. I didn't see what you were talking about before that burns. Oh, a 4G63. The greatest Pontiac guy ever was Smoking the Bandit. That did sell a lot of Trans Ams. Infamous, do you want to build an LS that will redline at 10,000? Go watch Ben over at EFI University. He has some stuff that's up in that RPM range. And then it's going to be really, really expensive. What would you recommend for a 240SX build? Well, a 5.3 is going to be a lot less expensive to start out with than a 6.2. So it depends on what kind of power you want. I mean, with boost, you can get more power than you could possibly put down with either one of those. Pipes are frozen in the trailer. So my girlfriend's been boiling water for the showers. I can tell by the temperature of my water if she wants me to put it on her. I have the 6X-4 heads. I use the springs that match with the cam. Raymer 4 heads have the clearance. They were unique. Intake ports are also different. Yes, it'll be about 200 cubic inches. It was 194.5 or something before. Is there a pole? I don't have a pole yet. Here, we'll throw something good up there. Okay, so the poll for today, will a reproduction stock HO350 Pontiac make more than 1 horsepower per cubic inch on the dyno? See what people think. I will still love the 2.2 Mopar engine forever, yeah. You tested older Patriot small block Chevy aluminum heads? I think I did. I think I ran the set of those on a 383. I don't remember what we compared them to. In fact, I don't think we compared them to anything. I think we just put them on a 383. Would this be noticeable from a previously described fuelie head with the same valves and combustion chamber? Yeah, that head should flow a lot more than a fuelie head does. It should flow 30 or 40 CFM easily more than a fuelie head does. 6X-4 head is good. It's not the best one. That would be a Gen 5 or a Ram Air 5. Put it together with one solid lifter. Well, just take the stock spring off, and then all you have to do is just put the retainer and keepers back on with no spring on there, and just move the valve up and down, and see how much room you have. Just measure it. Just move the and all you have to do is measure from the top. Just pull the valve all the way up with the retainer. Measure from the top of the retainer down to the spring seat, with the valve all the way up, and then do the same measurement with the valve all the way down when the retainer actually hits the seal, and then measure that and calculate the difference and just go, hey, look, there's 500 lift there, or there's 600 lift, or there's only 400 lift, whatever the number is. Almost all Pontiacs come with weak rods. I've been told that by a lot of motors that we've made lots of power with. I want a rear exhaust turbo on my Mercedes-Benz. What would be the best kit to buy? Where the Paxton be good? They do make Cadillac 500 stroker kits. You can make them bigger than that. You can do a rear exhaust turbo. It's a lot of work to run piping back and forth. I don't know if somebody makes a Paxton kit for a 500 SL Mercedes for that application, so you're gonna have to do it yourself. Either one of those is going to be a little bit of work. Or there's the top of the piston. Yeah, the piston obviously has to be down to be able to do that, but it doesn't have to be down very far. You could get 350 horsepower from a 350 Pontiac. Takes a little work, but they're not takes a little work. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to find a way to make 350 horsepower out of 350 inches. I already know that would be very easy to do with any model 350. What I want to know is, will the stock HO 350 make more than 350 horsepower? Good luck finding a Ram Air 5 head. I saw some the other day. I used to work on my cousin's Indy 500 Pontiac Firebird turbo. Those were 80, 81, I think. Per the poll, I suspect not. Had a friend in high school with a Firebird that had a stock 350, really cool car, but it was not fast. But was it the HO though? Because they made a lot of other 350 versions. They even made 2-barrel versions. 25th anniversary. Yeah, that's a different turbo thing. Richard, does a crossbar nitrous plate distribute nitrous and fuel more evenly into the cylinders compared to a single? I'm guessing you're going to say no. I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference between those two. Because even a single bar is going to spray those down at an angle toward the cylinders. And it's a big common plenum that it has to draw fuel from a central area. So the way that it draws that, it's not, the nitrous is not being injected into there. I've had people tell me that the perimeter plate is not good for distribution either. And in a single plane manifold, I don't know how that's possible, or let's just say I'd really like to see the test data. Would a 100 shot with a ramp be okay with a standard? You could run 100 shot on lots and lots of factory stuff. I ran 100 shots on my Mustang endlessly when it was all stock. I'd be happy with a Ram Air 4 or even an SD 455. I have a few sets of the heads of Pontiac heads available too that I'm selling for that. I haven't put any of that stuff up. I need to put that stuff up on Marketplace. The HO Pontiac, the 350 was 330 horse, I think. $320 horsepower. 69 is the year that you want. Yeah, the 69 is 330. 330 horsepower and 380 foot-pounds. Actually, looking at the head flow numbers for the Pontiac heads, they're not stellar. Richard, do you like the turbo Firebird things? I do. I'd love to test a turbo 301. The problem is the way that it's configured to run it in the car would be difficult to test it exactly like that on the engine dyno. But I think we could make it work. And then the thing is, it's a 200 or 210 horsepower motor. So it's not going to make a ton of power, but it still would be cool. And then you put an intercooler and all that stuff on it. Should I answer since I know what the HL350 was factory rated at? One other question. Are we talking about the 68 or the 69 version? I think we already answered that, right? And if you have an answer to something, yes, you should answer it. Why are you hiding your answers? My buddy ran a QJet off a 350 HO on a Vet 327. Yeah, you want to get the big QJet, the 800. Thomas wants to know if all Pontiacs have cast rods, or do any of the factory runs have forged rods? Maybe the Ram Air 5 did. You're learning that bronchitis is bad. You're just now learning that. The Super Duty engines had forged rods. Nice. The rest had what they call armor steel, essentially a cast rod. Yeah. I forgot about the Super Duty stuff. Did the Super Duty 455s also have the forged rods, or just the 421s? And did they make Super Duty 389s? I don't think that they did they? 69 GTO Rammer 4 wouldn't, I don't think it would have been a Holly. I think it would have been a Q-Jet. Pace car is also an 89 Pontiac. Yeah, that was a cool car. That was a Buick Grand National that was fairly aerodynamic, so it was really fast. Forged rods and forged crank on the Super Duty 455 is cool. The 421 Super Duty, not as good as, okay. I have a set of rings for a 355 Chevy with about 2 hours on them because camshaft problems. My question is, can I use them in a new build? Yes. 100% you can. We've taken motors apart from the wrecking yard when we put ring gap in them for turbo stuff that have 300 or 400,000 miles on them and file fit. When I say file fit, that's really generous. Put lots of ring gap in those rings and just reused them and put them in and it worked fine. Ultra, oh, you ruined your 670 heads. What heads do you have? I don't have anything that's going to be a 670 replacement, I don't think. But I can send you what I have. I know that there's some 6X heads there. Let's see. Let's see. I think I have the, let's see here. I have some, there's 2 sets of 6X heads. One of them has, one of them says M12 on it. And then has the date code on. The other one says DO56 and has a, that one is an M4. That set is an M4. And then there's another set too. I think one of them was, if I remember right, I have the notes on them. One of them was a big chamber, small valve head. The other 2 are both big valve heads. But I think, I don't remember what the chamber sizes were on. None of them were the early heads. Chad, happy to help, man. So what is our poll saying? 55% are saying no. We got some negative Nellies there. Will a reproduction stock HO 350 Pontiac make more than 1 horsepower per cubic inch? It'd be interesting. The Pontiac guys would love it if that 350 made LT1 and 365 horse 327 and DZ 302 kind of power. They would love that. Six X heads are identified by the number on the pad. I don't know if I took photos of the pad numbers. Nope. No, sir. The Bosch injector Bendix GM injection on the rear drive 350 old Sevilles were really good. That's a really esoteric piece of information, but always appreciated. No, Buick guy tells me that the stock 430 Buick makes more power than a stock 455. What are the rated power outputs on the 430? company making new Ram Air 5 heads. I've seen that. Cleveland Power is good. The one thing I think would be curious about the Pontiac 350 versus the other 350s is where the average power is compared to the peak. The reason is the valve seat angle. I think that the average power production is probably not going to be valve seat angle. That's probably going to be camshaft and cylinder head and intake manifold. But they did alter the valve angle. But it says that they altered the valve angle to improve the flow. And I'd like to see what the flow rate difference is between an early and a later head where they changed the valve angle to see if did they achieve their job. Seems like stock Pontiac heads top out about 400 horsepower. They flow about 210 CFM. I thought that that's what I thought that they were comparable to a fuelie head. The last great Pontiac engine was the SC455 in 73 and 74. Those are cool looking Transams too. I'm going to LS swap my L33 to my Jeep Grand Wagoneer because it'll make it worth so much more money. Is that the story that you're sticking with? James, on a different subject, the 5th gen ZL1 I'm tuning is making great power. Soon to get headers and an inner chiller along with a bigger pump and 96 injectors. Are you running E85 on it? What would you call the last great true Pontiac engine? I think that somebody said the SD455. Although Smokey the Bandit 400s and the turbo Trans Am that he also had. Was there something special about the stock Ram Air intake manifold? Do you have to lock out timing to boost a 455? No, you would have a curve would be better rather than a locked one. John, man, I'm happy to help. Pretty much all of the 2.1, 211 valve D-port heads flow about the same. That's what I thought. I thought that they were all pretty comparable. I wonder how much more those flow than the small valve heads. 390 and 401 AMC engines are starting to bring money. Yeah, you gotta have Rocky's book, right? Jim and Rocky's book. I think I do have that. I think I do have their Pontiac book up there. The round ports will get to 230. The Ram Air 5 stuff. The Ram Air 5 should be more than that, right? I'm looking to send a set of Australian 302 Cleveland heads to be CC'd against a set of Australian 351 heads. So 302 heads should have a smaller CC than 351. Are your 302 Cleveland heads, are they 4V heads? Or are they the Australian 2V Cleveland heads that I always hear about? Did they make a 4V head on the 302 Cleveland in Australia? I'm curious now. Stock injectors and pumper maxed out. Yeah, you need to get something going there, James. Richard, the best flowing D-port head is from a 74 GTO 350. They had small valves. So how can that head flow better than the big valve stuff? Will I hear anything boosting my 454 HO with a Pro Charger? You can if the tune's not right. Would it be possible to use a Grand National engine to use an 80mm turbo? Would I have to modify with the specs engine already? I don't know what you're asking, Jody. Are you want to use an 80mm turbo on a Grand National engine? The Ram R4 will go 230 or 240. That seems like a lot. 2V Australia. So no 4V Australia on the 302. Okay. So I was thinking that the 302 Cleveland, I was hoping that it was just a smaller version of a 351 like 4V Cleveland. It was a small version. So it would be more like a Boss 302, but an Australian version of a Boss 302. What's the plan for the L28? Trying to decide if it's worth it to keep the L series or go with a small. I'm not looking. Oh, you're trying to decide. I was going to say, I'm not trying to decide that. I already know what the answer to that is. 600 horsepower would be much easier to get out of an LS than it would be, and less expensive to get out of an LS than it would be to get that out of an L series. If that's the thing that you're looking for. Only 2V stuff. Okay. HO Racing in Lawndale. Yeah, I know Ken really well. Blaine, I'd like to find the HO Racing Turbo QJet mods. I could ask Ken about that. Is he still around? I don't know. He was not doing well for a long time. He's been to West Tech quite a few times, and he's brought over a Pontiac with that turbo QJet setup. Although it needed it really needed a wastegate. My buddy argues an LS will make more power than a big block. I don't know if he means. I never know what people mean by that. Are you meaning as an absolute thing? Because nobody in Pro Mod uses an LS. Everybody uses a really big motor because a bigger motor makes a lot more power. And then with a bigger motor, you can put bigger cylinder heads on it and all that. So that's not an absolute case. The Australian Cleveland heads are a closed chamber. Not at all impressed with Rocky's book. It's all about high dollar stuff. Jim Hammond's book was mostly the factory stuff. Bierman, did you skip my question or did I miss it about a 72 Nova? But what was your question? I didn't see anything about a 72 Nova, and I would have been interested because I was a previous owner. So I did not see it. But there's a lot of questions going on right now. Tom, you want a Gen 3 or a Gen 5 M90? I can get one, either one for a mock-up. What is that for? BNR Racing, the guys that did the later SD Air Research heads were way better than anything downsized tunnel ram 303 could produce. Would you be interested in tuning my 454 HO for boost? No, thank you. I don't have a shop, so that's not something that I do. If you plan to throw boost at a Pontiac, use an whatever that is. MR1 aftermarket block. Nice to hear you talking about Pontiacs. You have a 497 blown Pontiac and a Catalina. Nice. Who cares about expensive parts? What works best is what's necessary. That's why I like Slock Mechanics. Yeah, Matt's a good guy. He's done a lot for the industry. He's shown people, giving them a voice on how to do crazy stuff. When does the work start on your 240? Not till after the engine dyno stuff. What was the? I don't know what the question was on the 72 Nova. I haven't heard it back. What were the 389 tri-powers rated? Yeah, it depends on what year they were, but they got as high as 360. Could lack of fuel pressure cause black smoke to come out the exhaust upon revving the engine in neutral? Or is it more likely the lack of spark? Is it black smoke or blue smoke? If it's black smoke, it's probably a fueling issue. Twin M90s would be cool. You have a camshaft, a hydraulic roller. Danny, what are you using that cam for? That's a single pattern with a really wide LSA. That I can't think of an application that's going to work very well for. Would you ever consider meeting up with viewers at West Tech to test engine builds they have that you haven't done? Maybe other guys' stuff. Like what? Do you want to show up at West Tech and have somebody dyno your motor? The garage, there's no subject matter now. You're just asking questions. It's just a Q&A session. So whatever you want to talk about, we can talk about. And by the way, speaking of which, our poll is at 50-50 right now. We got half the people thinking it will make it and half the people thinking it won't. Yeah, if you want to talk about catch cans, we can. They're a good idea. I don't ever run PCV stuff on the engine dyno. We always vent the valve covers and the valley cover to atmosphere. I bet the Ram Air 400s made 450 horsepower with a set of long tubes on a dyno. I think that's way on the high side. Do single pattern cams ever perform better than dual pattern cams? It would depend on exactly which single plane you're testing against exactly which dual pattern you're testing. But I like the way that I would want to test them is that so you even out the intake duration. So start with the same intake duration. And then if you have the same exhaust duration on a single pattern and you have more exhaust duration on a dual pattern cam, typically what happens is the dual pattern cam makes more power. Sometimes the single pattern cam makes more low speed power, but the dual pattern makes more top end power. And then sometimes single pattern cams on 4-valve motors do really well. Have you ever tested PCV for performance improvements? We have gotten rid of crankcase pressure to improve power, and it definitely works. If you don't have enough crankcase evacuation on an LS, it will lose power. let's see here. I don't think the 350 will make 350 horsepower with the factory 068 cam, even with the 48 heads on it. But that's what it has. So we'll have to try like a collaboration test at West Tech. I don't know about doing that because you'd have to arrange that with them to pay for the dyno day. How well did those old motors run? I got fellas telling me about the motors they built with one compression ring and one oil ring. Did they have the piston built and designed like that, or did they just take one of them out? Because that's not a good idea. Are the 5-liter Mustangs reliable? Because I saw one on Facebook Marketplace for $1,300. The ECU and wiring harness from a 2015. So a Coyote you're asking about, right? Just for $1,300 seems kind of cheap for a Coyote with all that stuff. So make sure that it's running. Did anybody ever tell me what your Nova question was, Mr. 72 Nova guy? I haven't seen it if you did. Been sick for 4 days and I can't wrench. Yeah, we're always talking about engines. There's 2 different major variances in LS coils. 4.9 is in Pontiac or 300 Ford. Both of those are good answers. 2 more minutes. They took one of the rings out and they're saying that they ran top compression ring, left the middle clear. Maybe they put a really big gap in there or something. They said just one ring. I don't see how that's going to help. If they're trying to get rid of ring drag, I think they should look somewhere else for power. To bring up a dead subject, I only specified big block versus small block when there was a near overlap, like a 400 board Chevy small block. So they made a 400 small block and they made a 400 big block. I mean, it was called the 396, but actually it was a 402. So they have both of those. Dakota, I've seen a Rammer 4 make 382 at the tire. That would be about 450. So was it a bone stock one? My guess is the answer there is going to be no. Bierman, yes, I've typed it out twice. Let me see. Why am I not seeing? I'm gonna go to live chat here and see if maybe that's showing me something. And I will try to find your question. So let's scroll back and I'm going to look and see where it is. 8.8 liter Gen 7 big block with all the regular stuff to make 480 horsepower. 2.5 inches is enough for 480 horsepower. I need to change that all the time. Please remind me to change from top chat to live chat because I'm missing a lot of things. So I'm still scrolling back to try to find the Nova question. Now it's letting me not go back any further. So, Bierman, what is your question about the Nova? Now everybody wants to know. Why do people say the 318 is better than the 360? I don't ever say that. There you go, Dean. Dean's throwing out the love advice. $421s are good. Yeah, a 360 and a 318 is like the comparison that we have up between a 400 and a 350, or the 350 and like a 327. It's just, and even more so than the 350 and the 327. The 360 would just be better everywhere. I posted the video link. Can you post a video link on here? I didn't think you could do that. Yeah, a dome piston cam is not a good idea. You have a Concours restored Nova? I want to do drag week in the 72 Nova with my son. I'm planning on a 5.3 with a Trek Norris cam, springs, trunnion upgrade, forged pistons and rods, Trailblazer SS, and turbos. Okay, so all that seems good so far. What loss of powers are using a 3-inch exhaust on an 85 Chevy 454? Why would there be a loss in power? Was photographer and journalism your full-time career? Yes, that's all that I did for many, many years. Is that doable under 15 pounds of boost, or are you better off going with a different cam? Is what doable? What kind of, you didn't specify what kind of power you want. The easiest way for you to do is to tell me how much power you want, and I can tell you where to go to look at the video that makes that amount of power, or just tell you what you need to do to make that kind of power. If you're running 15 pounds of boost, you're going to double the NA power. So whatever your NA power is, if it's 400, it's going to be 800. If it's 500, it's going to be 1,000. Whatever it is NA, it's going to be doubled at 15 pounds if you did everything right. Funny how people call the 455 Pontiac a big block. It is a big block. It's 455 cubic inches. It's definitely big block territory, just like a 454 Chevy. I know that they don't have big blocks, but it is a big block. Sorry, Miss Quadrajet discussion. It is a good carburetor. It works really well. The limitation seems to be the available fuel flow, but I put a cam in my truck. Can I tune it? It's a 97 Chevy 5.7 Vortec. I think that they probably have tuning for that. How much power would you be comfortable with everyday driving a 6-liter with a turbo? That's up to you. How much of it are you going to use? The nice thing about a turbo is you can always run less boost and have it be a 7-pound turbo and not be a 15 or 20-pound turbo. You have a doctorate in journalism? I don't want to be beat by electric car, which is getting harder nowadays. So I'd like it to run nines. Nines with a 5.3 powered turbo, almost anything is really easy to get in the nines. Because if you take a 5.3, and even if you ran stock heads, if you put a cam and springs in a 5.3 and ran, let's see, you would make, if you put the right cam in it, you could make 900. I don't know if that's enough to run nines on your, at 15 pounds, but so you run 20 pounds. I haven't ever seen the LS in a Corvair. It's not a big bluff. I know I get Pontiac guys yell at me all the time. What tuning can you use for? I don't know. I don't ever tune stuff in the car. A blow through quadrajet. Yeah, I've never done that. Better not be around and interrupt internet Pontiac guy. No, I get flamed for that all the time. You want to make 850 at the tire through? Is it through an automatic? It's going to probably take more than 15 pounds to make 850 at the tire with a 5.3, unless you really did a dedicated build on it. Be a lot easier with a 6.0. Just want to say I'm new to your channel. I've learned a lot. Great. I'm glad you're here. 1979 all engines got I don't know what HP time is. No tuner has a software to program the old ECUs. No tuner does? No, I don't have a doctorate in journalism. I don't think I've spoken to somebody that has that. Do a blow through quadrajet. I'd have to look at it. On an 84, it would only be 84 on the Corvette because the 85 was a tune port. But on the Crossfire, is it possible to open up the ports? Yeah, you can. You want to look at the ports by the cylinder heads because that's really, really small. But also you can open up the opening. The trick is to put big block throttle bodies on it and injectors. $1979 Chevy 350 truck engine. Did it come with an 850? It would have been an 800 or a 750, and it probably is a 750. It probably was a smaller one. Hunter S. Thompson had a doctorate. He was pretty good. Can an LS be run on E85 with a Terminator setup? Yes. Working with Andy and David. I talked to David about that 318 that they were doing. I found it interesting to learn what their rules and their own self-imposed limitations were on the thing that they were doing. Okay, Patrick, yours will be the last one. I'm going to close out the poll. 52% are saying yes, that they think that the showed some enthusiasm that the Pontiac 350 is going to make 350 horsepower. I don't know if that's the case. Let's see. I have a 2003 Yukon LQ9. In 03. Swap 317 heads milled to 11-1. So you milled the 317 heads, BTR stage 3 really hung up on intake, injector, and throttle body. I would put a Trailblazer SS intake manifold on there and a 90 millimeter throttle body. Was that a drive-by-wire in 03 on that car or on that motor? And if it's an LQ9, did it have the normal truck intake manifold, or did it have the did it have the early truck intake manifold with the drive-by-wire throttle body on her? The thing that I don't know is if the 90 millimeter drive-by-wire throttle body for the later ones is going to plug right in to where that smaller one was. That's the only thing I don't know. And you're going to need bigger injectors with that camshaft, certainly. So you're going to have it tuned. And on that note, it's time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. We'll be back tomorrow morning and more videos coming out. So if you haven't, please go watch the video that I posted today on the 400 Pontiac versus the little 350 Chevy and then the even littler 302 Chevy, because displacement matters and there really is no replacement. I'll see you guys all tomorrow morning. Bow, 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 bow.